Now, how many of you out there have always looked for every single year the perfect food plot that you can create for the wildlife and whitetails on your land? I know I have. I've manicured my plots, had perfect looking clover. I've cut that clover, groomed that clover. Brassicas, I don't like any weeds showing. I mean, heck, even down to the switchgrass plantings. I love to have perfect switchgrass plantings with no weeds in them. But when it comes to the perfect food plot, I think it's great that we focus a little bit less on the perfect food source that offers the most volume of nutrition and nutrients at a specific time. Say, for example, alfalfa all summer long, or even brassicas in December. We need to focus on the value of that food plot as it relates to local habitat and what else is going on in the world of whitetails in your neighborhood. Give you an example. When April comes around, in most locations in the north half of the country, the deer have everything that they need. When spring green up hits, that is a time of plenty, and the whitetails want for nothing at that time. They have plenty of moisture, plenty of green succulent growth, and you could look at April as the best time for the local habitat in your neck of the woods. May, great time. June, pretty good, hot. Sometimes drought starts coming in. July and August can be kind of droughty, but there's still a lot of nutrients and forages and a great amount of food that's available in most neighborhoods in the north half of the country. When you start getting to September, weeds are dying, beans are turning brown. That's that time where the local habitat that has peaked in April and May and slightly declined but held its own and very strong for a period of time is starting to decline. And finally, when you get into October, November, and it gets into a time where the beans are turning brown, the beans have been picked, the corn has been picked and harvested and cut, fields have been plowed, the local habitat is going down quickly in the amount of nutrients and forage and attraction that's available. So when you think about your food plots, when are your food plots available? When are they available to the local deer, local wildlife? And is it at a time when the habitat is also at its best? So think about it. If you're offering food plots at a time when the local habitat is a 10 out of 10, meaning the best it can be all year, are your food plots really offering that much to the local deer herd? And if you have small properties like I do that I hunt on properties that are 45 to 50 acres and less. And then also my clients, I'd say I have half of my clients are 60 acres or less. But even if you have 500 to 1,000 acres or less, you really don't have a lot of room sometimes to offer your resources for deer at times when the deer have abundancy in their neck of the woods. And I'll give you an example. Right here behind me, we have oats that are acting as a nurse crop for a crop of alfalfa coming in. This is going to be on an outstanding pasture that'll offer high quality food. We'll get that last cutting sometime in September on this food source. And then as we get into October, this food source will actually green up. And the size behind me, my small 1 1/4 acre food plot behind the camera that's located about 200 yards away cannot compete with this food source during the summer. Now it also can't compete with the food sources down in the bottom over here, the soybeans that are over here, the other pasture land. I have food all around here during the summertime. You could even make a case that I could look at this food source right here compared to my food source over here because of the resources of the farmer that's working this field, and he's doing it for profession, he's doing it to make a living, he's doing it for a harvest, he's doing it to feed his cattle and get the most out of every inch of square acre food space that he has in this location, that I simply can't compete over there. Not only can I not compete in size, but I can't compete in quality. If for some reason I held deer over there and held them all day, 24 hours a day, you can make a case that the nutrition here and the nutrition levels and volume are greater than I can actually offer over there, and I'm actually doing a disservice to the deer by making them hang over out in a small parcel with higher stress, lower nutrition rates, and lower volume. Let's flip that around. As this food source is starting to slow down in mid to late October, because after that first frost hits, this alfalfa is going to turn stemmy, yellow, dormant, and the nutritional value and the traction is cut in half or more. Actually, the plot that I have over there and the nutrition that there is, I will have peas, beans, brassicas, rye, and oats that are all working to peak nutrition and attraction in through the middle of November. Now when you get into October, November, December, January, February, March, the deer progressively have less and less in the local habitat, and certainly less and less in food plots, forages, if they're summer planted. Think about the value difference. You're offering a high quality food plot at a time when the local habitat's a 10. Your food plot's really not changing the difference in the food plot or in the habitat. You're not attracting deer, holding them, advancing them to the next age class like you would during hunting season. So think about that during hunting season. You're offering a high quality food plot. Let's say it's a 4, a 7, an 8, a 9 out of 10 in quality at a time when your local habitat is shrinking from a 4 to a 3 to a 2 to a 1. And finally, when you get into late December, it's probably a 0. So your local habitat's not offering much. That difference in value of your food plot and what it's offering at a time relative to the habitat and its value is really where the perfect food plot actually comes in. Your perfect food plot should be a food plot that you can offer high volume, diversity and attraction, nutrition, and enough attraction that you can actually control the movements of the daylight deer herd to your food plot, advance those deer to the next age class in the form of bucks, and then finally send them off to someone else's food plots that are overpressured, maybe a corn picked field, a standing soybean field, whatever it might be. You're really working on that window of difference that you can make to the local wildlife and whitetails in your neighborhood based on what the habitat is currently, what it will be, and what that difference is compared to the habitat out of a 10 out of 10, a 2 out of 10, a 0 out of 10, and what your food plot is actually offering. Think about that. It's not just the perfect food plot, how it's planted, how it's growing, the volume. It's the perfect food plot offered at the best time when your local habitat is declining or at an all-time low for the 12 months of the year. That's where you can actually stand to make a difference with your deer herd. Imagine the food that you can give late fall into winter, and then right at spring green up, if you have winter rye or wheat, that's available before clover and before alfalfa, before any ag plants are getting. So I found that you can give 2 to 4 weeks of nutrition with rye or wheat, even right at the end of the winter. Imagine that 2 to 4 weeks of green that you can give to deer. And for mothers that will be nursing soon, for pregnant does. And then at the same time, that fall, winter, let's say you have food that lasts strong in October, November, December, maybe a little bit into January, and then February, March, it's gone. Still, those deer had an incredible amount of forage available to them at a time when the local habitat was 0. And that's where you make a difference. That's where you make a difference on improving your herd, improving sex ratios, really reaching and attaining your adequate buck age structure, and giving you yourself the ability to maintain populations of deer within the balance of their habitat, and making sure that you can raise or lower those numbers as needed. You know, if your property is peaking in June and July at a time when the local habitat's great too, it's not hunting season. Really not much you can do with the local herd and manipulating that herd and moving it around. So again, do you have the perfect food plot? It's not based necessarily on the perfect planting, the perfect amount of volume, or the perfect forage variety that has the best value nutrition. Instead, it's based on what are you offering at a time when the local habitat is at its lowest time of the year. And I'll tell you what, when we talk about hinge cuts, we talk about timber management, timber harvest, think about all that thousands of pounds of forage per acre when you complete a clear cut or when you complete a hinge cut area for bedding areas, depending on which need you have for your timber, and offering that during the winter time when the local habitat is at a 0. There's a lot of ways you can make sure that you're doing your best for whitetails, and thinking about the perfect food plot and as it relates to the timing of the local habitat is a great way and a great strategy to make sure you're on pace for reaching your goals of creating an actual quality herd and a quality hunt.